It is Froster Buns Friday, but we do have a guest on board. It is Jessica Ward from the National Taxpayers Union. Jessica, I apologize that we didn't call you sooner. It was my mistake. But we are thrilled.
No worries.
We are thrilled to have you with us. And you are right now up in Madison, Wisconsin, which is a bastion of progressive legislators. I don't know how you survive.
It most certainly is, yes.
Yeah. We got a character here, Gary the Liberal, that based on a buddy of mine that lives up there. And, oh, man, I'm glad I'm not there. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about and this is just where we're going to start, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act extension. What does this do for Missouri families? Because the Democrats keep saying this is a real big tax cut for the rich. And, it's catering to wealthy billionaires, and it's evil.
I mean, that's generally the narrative that Democrats use. What's interesting about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is that it did exactly the opposite of that. In fact, wages went up, and the average household was making approximately $6,000 more per year. We created over 500,000 jobs, and millions of those, by the way, were small business jobs. And it was interesting because that, of course, was the narrative that you speak about. But under that act, the lowest earners saw their incomes rise the fastest. So this wasn't just this is great for the rich. This was good for working people, and particularly great for small businesses, which, if this is not extended, could face a rate of up to 43% tax on their small business, which, I don't have to tell you that is a killer for small businesses. And in addition to my role at NTU, I happen to own 3 small businesses in the Madison area. And frankly, this tax cut was able to keep a couple of my businesses alive during the COVID period. So the narrative that, this is going to only help the rich is absurd. A family of 4 that earns $80,000 per year would owe approximately $1,700 more in taxes if this is not extended. And that is significant. I mean, those are groceries that go on the table. So, yes, to your point, that is a narrative that is absolutely false, and this has to be a priority for our elected officials in the federal government.
By the way, and I've pointed this out to listeners in the past, when Democrats are raising taxes on the wealthy, it's only 1 or 2%. It's tiny, minuscule. Correct. But when the Republicans cut taxes on the wealthy, it's $1 million. It's $100,000. Then they start talking actual dollar amounts. This way they can make it look like the wealthy are, getting some kind of gift from heaven when the Republicans cut taxes, but they're barely being nicked when the Democrats raise taxes. It's clever on their part.
It is rather clever. I mean, this will be the largest tax hike in American history if we don't extend, Tax Cuts Jobs Act. And that is during this current period of inflation and tariffs, et cetera. We absolutely need to make this a priority, and state lawmakers need to, because of course politically this all trickles down too. And, voters in Missouri are going to be unhappy if they see their tax bill go up exponentially.
If you just turn the radio on, Jessica Ward is with us from the National Taxpayers Union, joining us on the Gary Nolan Show. There is a problem, and I know you guys are apolitical. You're not Democrats or Republicans, but the Republicans understand that we really need to cut spending dramatically, and it is the social programs that are driving this national debt through the roof. Yet they won't do anything about it. The Democrats, Jessica, clearly know the same thing, because they even said it. Their admission is, in order for us to save $1 trillion or $2 trillion a year, you have to go after the social programs. And then they start vilifying the Republicans, even though they're not doing that. Mm-hmm. How do we get them to act on what they know is the problem?
Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? To some extent, both parties are a little hesitant to address the the social programs, and I couldn't agree with you more. Washington doesn't have a revenue problem; it has a severe spending problem, which at NTU we are pointing out endlessly. We on our end have been trying to implement some changes, particularly to the payroll tax, which has been just an enormous burden on a lot of small businesses across the country. As every time you hire an employee, a significant percentage of your profits as a business are being directed to the federal government, whether that be through FICA or unemployment, the unemployment costs that you're having to pay into. So our big push recently at NTU in terms of the payroll tax is to get states to index the payroll tax based on the unemployment rate. I know in Missouri, there have been a couple of efforts to do that, to reduce it from 20 weeks to 8, depending on the unemployment rate. In other words, if the unemployment rate is 3.5%, we need to lower the number of weeks eligible to 8 weeks, whereas if the unemployment rate is upwards of 7, 8, 9%, then we need to extend those benefits. But that would ease a significant burden on state costs, because right now it is extremely expensive to hire employees. Me personally, every time I hire an employee, there are times where I'd like to hire more than just that 1 or 2, but I'm not able to because of the costs that are incurred by the federal government. 60% of what the revenue they take in is from payroll taxes. That is just insane, and we need to adjust some of those social programs, whether that be the Social Security, age, et cetera, to ease the burden on states and small business owners and families across the nation.
Jessica Ward with us from the National Taxpayers Union here on the Gary Nolan Show. I'm actually from a steel city, and I remember when steel mills were in trouble, they'd lay people off, whatever was going on. And I remember customers of mine that worked at the steel mills would come in and they would say, hey, Gary, will you fill this out and say that I applied for a job here? What they were doing is staying, living off the unemployment insurance until the last possible day, and then they would go back to work, or they'd go out and find a job. Mm-hmm. Unemployment insurance simply makes it possible to go on an extended vacation. I don't think I would love to see.
Agree with you more.
I would love to see it go away entirely. If we were to give people their gross pay, maybe we do the fair tax. They would be able to put money aside for, when the bad times hit. They would be accountable and responsible for themselves. They'd rely on private charity if, the bottom fell out. And I think it would be a lot less expensive. It would help businesses to succeed because their overhead would be lower. It makes me crazy. You talk about
go ahead.
No, I was going to move on to spending restraints in the state of Missouri. Any suggestions?
Well, we haven't particularly looked specifically at spending restraints. What we did look at in Missouri is currently Missouri is the 37th best state, which there are 50, so that's not great, in terms of offering withholding or threshold or reciprocity agreements, meaning the state's filing threshold is only $600. Let's say if someone from Missouri goes to work in Illinois, or they go to work in Kansas, or wherever that might be. That's approximately 2 days of work, and then beyond that, you're asking the taxpayer to then, of course, file taxes wherever they were at for more than 2 days. And we recently, the program's called Rome, because I think that we need to not be naive that employees are now given all the technological advances and just how people are moving around. We need to be aware that, taxpayers have states enter into reciprocity agreements with bordering states. So the workforce isn't burdened by having to file taxes in more than one state. But in terms of spending, I mean, I'm sure you have some rather strong opinions on spending, but Missouri isn't terrible. Obviously, they've been talking about the flat tax, and there's been lots of discussion in regards to capital gains, which I would love to see happen in Missouri. It would be incredibly interesting. Generally speaking, when we look at some of the stuff that's occurred in other states, it's, for instance, Washington raised their capital gains tax. I don't think a state has completely eliminated a capital gains tax, so I would love to see that, and certainly love what you all are doing with moving towards a flat tax. Of course, we love states that don't have any income tax whatsoever, but I do think this is certainly a better position than where y'all are currently at.
More and more states are getting rid of their income tax, or at least winding it down to that as their ultimate goal. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are. I think there are approximately 9 states right now, and a lot of those states also have done what I suggested with unemployment, which is to, Florida being one of them, which is to eliminate or base your unemployment weeks on the unemployment rate. And so I can't say enough about that because it would save states a ton of money, and there'd be a lot less lengthy free vacations out there.
Jessica Ward on the Gary Nolan Show from the National Taxpayers Union. By the way, it's ntu.org, ntu.org. Florida, they're looking at getting rid of the real estate tax. They don't have an income tax. And, I mean, it's going to be utopia. It's going to draw businesses from all over the country.
Absolutely.
Yeah? Yeah,
absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's, you have states like North Carolina's getting there, Florida, Tennessee doesn't have an income tax, and they're just booming. So we hope to see states continue to transition more and more into not having that income tax. But yes, Florida's going to be a utopia, and then the only problem that they're going to have is watching their population continue to soar like it already is, and trying to deal with that on the Medicaid rolls and Medicare rolls.
Yeah. All right, Jessica Ward, thank you for being with us this morning. Hope to have you back.
I appreciate having me.
All right.